Welcome back to another exciting episode of Sports to Suits, where weekly I highlight former athletes that are doing some incredible things in the business community. And we kind of talk about their story. We talk about, their athletic background as well as their career and some of the things that they've learned from sports to apply it in business. And so I am super excited today. Joseph and I have not talked very much before this meeting, so I'm excited as
No,
well
this is great. Yeah.
to learn a little bit more about your story. So, Joseph, as people are popping in, why don't you share just a little bit about your athletic background as well as some of the business stuff that you're doing right now?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And that was a really intense introduction. I wasn't expecting it. I had the headphones on and it was like pounding. It was great. I just
We've
got
got to
pumped
bring the
myself
joy
for
and
that.
energy. Like, there's no reason to have a boring conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, where do we start? So volleyball was my sport of choice for the majority of my athletic career. I'm born and raised in Chicago, which is where I still am. And through high school, I wanted to play in college and had the opportunity to get partial scholarship to Loyola of Chicago for men's volleyball. And a little education, the scholarships for men's volleyball are a little bit different than women's volleyball. So I believe the stats are still every 4 years, you get 4.5 full scholarships for men's, and every 4 years you get 12 full scholarships for women's.
Wow.
And that's because of Title IX, because there's a lot of male-dominated sports that kind of pull some of those scholarships. And they have to be evened out. So it's competitive in that there's not many scholarship opportunities and not as many Division I teams. But ended up choosing Loyola of Chicago, so didn't go too far. Started in 2009.
Well, I would imagine you weren't playing beach volleyball in Loyola.
No, only pickup. Yeah. Okay. Just for training, definitely. So it was indoor, correct? Yeah, good question. So sixes men's indoor was the sport. Started in 2009, redshirted my first year. For folks that don't know what redshirting is, it means you don't play in any official matches, but you still practice and do everything else with the team to get that 5th year of eligibility. And I was very, very small my freshman year. I was 6'7", but 50 pounds less than I am now. So yeah, that redshirt year gave me an opportunity to learn what weights are and kind of get used to the speed of collegiate volleyball. Did it for 5 years, was captain the last couple years, 3-time All-American. I'm thinking back to the statistics. I haven't had to talk about these in a while.
Well, no big deal. It's not impressive at all, by the
way. Yes. And then my 5th year. So this is a really, really fun story. So for hosting the NCAA tournaments for men's volleyball, you have to submit like 3 years ahead of time to request to actually host it. And my sophomore, junior year, we requested to host it. Funny enough, my final year, 5th year, we were hosting it. And not only that, but that was like the crescendo of my collegiate volleyball career, where I think only had 1 loss the whole season. We were number 1 in the nation, and this is Division I, number 1 in the nation throughout the season. We made it to the national tournament at our hometown, and we ended up winning the national championship in 2013.
How did that feel? Like, was that like the coolest thing ever?
It was wild. It was. I think so. Gentile Arena is here in Chicago, the name of the arena that I was in, and I think it seats like 5,000 or something. So not crazy amount, but I think 99.9% of the people there were Loyola fans. So it's kind of unfair to Stanford, who we ended up playing the national championship. But it was a blast. It was surreal to be able to host and kind of be a part of that and be on that team. And yeah.
So you played, and then you played in college, and did you go to play professional outside of school as well?
So it was after college, which is a good question. So after my 5th year, I did the 5-year, and this is kind of related to the business side. Loyola has a 5-year BBA MBA program, and since I was going to be there for a 5th year, instead of like triple majoring, I decided to have a concentration for an MBA in international business, because I knew I was going to have a dream of playing abroad, and I knew I wanted to do business abroad with whatever company I worked for. And it worked out. Got my master's, finished with the master's in a national championship ring, going into the professional career, which I had my first year opportunity in Finland. So that was the first year of professional volleyball and first time leaving the country, not including Canada, was just like fly to Finland, 10 hours north of Helsinki, which is capital of Finland. And 10 hours north is very far north. We were about a mile from the Arctic Circle in a town called Rovaniemi, which for geography buffs, people that don't know, the headquarters of Santa Claus is in Rovaniemi. There is actually a town there where the Santa Claus gets paid like $500,000, speaks 20 languages. People fly all over the world to here. There's reindeer, there's ice hotels. It's wild. It's wild.
And you're playing volleyball. So when I envision volleyball, I envision outside, beach, and you're up far north in super cold weather.
Yes. So luckily indoors. Yes.
Yes, indoors. So what was that experience like? So you go from US, you go into Finland, you're starting to play, what is that like for you?
Yeah. So I'd always mentally knew that I wanted to kind of leave the nest, and this was kind of the first time to do it, and why not rip the Band-Aid off and have an 8-hour difference? But I remember getting to Finland, and because we were so far north, their summers were like 20 plus hours of sunlight, and then their winters were like 20 plus hours of darkness. And I just got there at the tail end of summer, so I didn't get to experience that positive vibes of sunlight all the time. So it was dark. Luckily, there was a lot of snow to brighten up. But we had to get like vitamin D supplements that we took every few months just to get that. But overall, the experience was amazing. I have a little Finnish in my blood, so that was kind of part of the reason I wanted to go there. So I got to see the homeland of the family on my dad's side. But I mean, like the saunas, the cooking sausage on the sauna rocks, the crappy beer, awesome vodka, and amazing people that are in Finland was a great first experience for that first year of professional volleyball.
So shout out to anybody in Finland, first and foremost. So we have people listening internationally. So drop us a message on where you're listening from, because I'm always fascinated with who's joining in on the calls. Okay. So you start playing professionally in Finland.
Yep.
Are you working at the same time, or are you kind of tell me a little bit about that side of it as well?
So that was my main source of income, and that was a plan. You get paid to play. It's a professional sport. Usually professional athletes don't have side gigs. So that was my main source of income. But there's a lot of downtime, right? So like you practice maybe at least once a day, and then you work out at least once a day, but you have the rest of the day to do whatever. And I was in a kind of small town in Finland for that first year. And so there wasn't too much opportunity to travel around. Sometimes the teams would go across the border to Sweden to get like their beer and their cigarettes and things that are a little bit cheaper apparently across the border in Sweden. But yeah, it was the main source of income. But something I knew in my mind that I was going to get back into the business world. And I knew I wasn't going to be following a classic professional athlete for volleyball, at least where you're 10 plus years, because I just got my master's. So I didn't want to be away for too long, because that would have kind of been a waste to have all that education and momentum from schooling and academia. So I did stuff on the side. So I did a lot of the marketing for my volleyball team in Finland, for example. I'd go to local businesses and ask them if they need any help with business-related activities like marketing. I did a little bit of consulting for a company back in Chicago for merchandising for athletic goods. So I was still kind of keeping myself busy that way when I was on future interviews of like, oh, so you just took like X amount of years off? I'm like, no, here's some portfolio items that I did. Here's some outcomes I've driven with organizations that I helped consult for and PR while I was abroad. So myself busy for sure.
So would you recommend that to existing athletes? So if there's existing athletes that are in, college or playing professionally, like, would you recommend them kind of like keeping afloat on the business side of things as well?
Yeah, I think so. I would say yes, but maybe don't do it to the extreme where you're not getting sleep. There are some points when that was me, it was hard to get sleep anyways. When it was like 20 hours of darkness, you didn't really know when to sleep. But yeah, I would recommend it just to keep similar to sports. Like you want to keep the reps in. So it's like it's not like you're just not picking up a basketball for 5 years and expecting yourself to play the same way. I always recommend people to even interview when they're not looking for a job, just to keep that repetition going, just to think from a business perspective, just to keep that momentum and that repetition going. So I would recommend it. Just know the extremes and know when one's suffering. The main reason you're there, your income, the sport, execute for that team, do well, improve. Don't pull time away from practicing just to do things that you're not really there to do. So only if you have extra time would be the recommendation. Yeah.
So you did this throughout your volleyball career as well, and then what happened after that? Like, at what point did you say I'm not going to play professional volleyball anymore?
So I did 1 year in Finland, and then the next year, which is I only did 2 years of professional volleyball, was in France. So I was at a little city called Combray. It was about an hour and a half northeast of Paris and an hour and a half southwest of Brussels. So it was kind of in a really cool spot for traveling wise. And that was the second year. And we haven't gotten to this yet, but my then girlfriend, now wife, traveled with me that second time. And this is a fun story I told you about previously that I wanted to get into. So in Finland, so my wife and I, first of all, we met when we were 18 years old in senior year of high school at our same volleyball club. So our first interaction was she was working the tryout table, handing out T-shirts to the boys' 18s. And I walk up again, reminding you of that 50 pounds less than I am now. Uh-oh, my cat's crazy. So 50 pounds less than I am now. And I walk up and she asks what T-shirt size. And I say something like triple XL, which is, I was wearing mediums back then. And she just rolled her eyes and laughed. So that was the first conversation I ever had. And fast forward, long distance is tough. So the first year in Finland, we were long distance for 6 months, which is the longest that her and I had ever been away from each other, not in the same proximity. And not only that, but 8-hour difference. So if folks need any advice on how to maintain a long distance relationship, I'll raise my hand and give you insights, because I learned a ton through that.
Well, you guys were massive time zone difference, like massive culture, like even like, I can't imagine that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And 6 months in is when we had planned her to come visit me in Finland. And she had just finished her master's at that point. And she's like, hey, this is perfect timing. I'm finished my master's, going to go visit me in Finland for a couple of weeks. And so she came, and I had her practice with the women's team because she wanted to just like stay active while she was out there. And they ended up offering her a professional contract to finish out the women's season. And so that was
cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Because she's an athlete too. She kicks butt. And then that was a hard call for her mom to be like, hey mom, I said 2 weeks, but I'll be back in like 3 months.
Well, I'm sure you weren't winning points at this.
I know. It wasn't too good. It wasn't too good. And the funniest part of that story is the women's team ended up doing much better than the men's team. So I went home and she was still in Finland, finishing out her season. So,
oh my gosh.
So yeah. So that was the first year. And then she decided to travel with me that whole time. And she helped coach the youth team in France there to stay busy herself and whatnot. So France was amazing. Central, we were a really good location, got to travel to a lot of different countries. My goal is to visit as many countries as my age. I'm 31 now, and I think I've visited 27 countries, so I'm a little behind, but we'll get up there once COVID starts dying down. But yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Cool. So you guys now, like, you guys both played professionally, and then at what point did you guys both kind of wrap up your professional volleyball careers?
Yeah, so my body was hurting a little bit more than it used to. I kept thinking about not wanting to be away from the business world for too long. We wanted to start establishing a foundation for our family, because in France is when we got engaged. So we went to the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland, very popular site. And that's where I proposed. And so we were engaged at that point, and we just wanted professional sports, as many that listen to this can attest, is not, depending on where you're at, it's not a profession for risk averse people. So like, for example, if you get injured, at least in professional volleyball, they could just send you home, or just stop paying you, which there've been a lot of horror stories of volleyball folks that have experienced that. And so, in order to make a lot of money with volleyball, you have to stay in it for maybe 5+ years. And I knew I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't making too much money. And I wanted to start building a foundation. My wife, Corey, wanted to start building a foundation. And so we decided that second year was good. We did tons of traveling. Now it's time to get back to Chicago and start working for the corporate side of business. Yeah.
Okay, so you jump into corporate.
Yep.
How was that experience for you? Because it is very, very different. Like as far as even teams are considered, like teams in a corporate setting, yes, they're teams, but they're very different teams than what you're used to. So how was that experience going from, volleyball into the corporate world?
Yeah, I think I picked an initial job that is as close to athletics in terms of the competition as possible, and that is entry-level sales.
There you go.
So a lot of athletes start here because it's a way to stay competitive. It's a way to, like, with yourself, but also with your teammates. It's a way to kind of have that still high risk experience. It's a way to have that input equals output if you have a commission structure, which I can't imagine a job without a commission structure where it's just a base salary. So that input equals output is something that you could physically and visually actually do, which is kind of an important part of the jobs that I want to have, at least currently. Don't quote me on that, but right now that's my style. And so
you're still in sales though.
Yes.
So you've grown through the ranks. So a lot of people, if you're listening, especially athletes that don't have backgrounds in sales, do you mind sharing a little bit about kind of like the hierarchy? And I don't necessarily mean hierarchy. I just mean like you've got to start. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to jump into a role straight out of the gate. I'm going to be like, national accounts, or I'm going to be in a very senior level position. And that's not typically the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to get into the tech industry. I didn't know how. And a lot of times really easy ways to get in, depending on the company, right, or entry level sales. So I had no real tech experience. I liked fiddling with like computers and video game systems. So I just had a little bit of a passion for technology. So I knew that that's where I wanted to go. And my first job was for a company called Soft Choice, and they're an IT reseller. And they hire a lot of folks that have not much IT experience because they have a lot of these tech companies have really, really solid training programs where they do crash course for months, 3-6 months, where they teach you what is hardware, what is software, what is cloud, just so you could be a little bit more comfortable on those conversations. And so, did a year and a half of entry-level sales, cold calling, 100 calls a day, where you get a lot of no's, no one really picking up, but you really, really hone in on your voice as a salesperson, and you really get the repetitions, back to the sports analogies. And I think it's a really good starting point for athletes because we're not too afraid to not get what the result that we want. We're not too afraid to have somebody yelling in our face. Or people to say no, because we get that on the court, we get that in the practice.
Yep.
So it's something that is normal for us to experience, which you can't really say for everyone getting into those positions.
Well, and it's really important. You said something that is critical to success, and I had this as well. So you said that there was a company. I have an IT background too. Companies that provide out of the gate education and resources, and training to support you through the sales process. Like you have to know what you're talking about in some regards, and you don't have to be a technologist. Like technology is an awesome, awesome place for people to go. There's so much opportunity, and you don't have to be a coder to thrive.
Exactly. Yeah.
But find companies that will support you through that, because if they just like throw you out to the wolves, you're not going to know the lingo. More than likely.
Exactly. And I think that's one thing when at my first position, when I started mentoring new hires, was telling them is you don't have to know everything. You just have to know what's relevant, and you just have to know like 1% or more than whoever the heck you're talking to. And they'll see you as kind of the subject matter expert. And that's not to say
boundaries too. Like you got to know when to like humble yourself and be like, I don't freaking know this. Like, but I know people in the company that can help. And that's when the team atmosphere is so important. Did you see that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was probably one of the hardest things, because as very self-critical folks, usually athletes are, is we want to have the answer to everything. So that's probably a harder thing for athletes, is to be able to say, I don't know, versus being able to cold call somebody when you don't know much really about what you're talking about and you're just learning.
So what's your best cold calling tip? Like, and this is, if you are in entry level sales, you better know how to pick up the phone and just dial. Like you will not get results if you do not do that. Like you have to pick up the phone. So what's your best cold call tip?
I think my best tip would be, it's so much harder to do a practice cold call with somebody that you know, or your peer or your manager, or even your VP or your director. So do a run through with them. Everything else is going to seem so much easier after that, especially when you're calling people that you don't know. So I think that's kind of a thing that we don't do much, because it's harder to do than just to call somebody you don't know, is to work on your pitch, to run it by the person who writes your checks, right? Because you don't want to look like you don't know what you're talking about. But if you could get that down, the rest is going to be easy, and they'll give you some really good feedback as well along the way. So that'd be the best.
It's uncomfortable. Like nobody feels like super comfortable straight out of the gate. I think it's like a grit thing too. Like if you can just like, push through the getting over the super uncomfortable piece, at some point it will become like second nature. But everybody, I have not found anybody that has thrived in enterprise sales. I've heard a lot of people that have left, but thrived in sales. That don't feel uncomfortable at some point in their career with making those calls. So another cool activity that you could do is, they have these like Plantronics Jabra speakerphones where you just go in a conference room, set it in the middle of the table, pick a friend of yours, and just go back and forth. Everyone has their own call list. So go with your peer and be like, you call, then I call, then you call. You just sit in the room and learn what other people do, hear all the hangups. And it's just a good way to experience it and have that team environment and just kind of suffer together. What were some of the suffer together? So I love that. What was some of the biggest challenges that you saw, especially when you were mentoring or entry level sales reps? What were some of the biggest challenges, like the biggest things that you saw in regards to that?
Yeah, probably just the overwhelm that could be experienced with the thought of having to have that many calls a day, or depending on where you work for. The overwhelm that is like the tech industry, because there's so many rabbit holes you could go down, and you could easily overwhelm yourself and just say you don't really know anything. So I think that was the most thing, of just the overwhelm of the calls, the overwhelm of the environment, and just managing your time effectively. Those are kind of where some of the main things I'm saying. And initially,
I would imagine that you saw some success in sales, because if you've climbed and like, gotten into more senior positions, then you have to, like, everybody has to start from the beginning. So like, tell me a little bit more about, kind of some of the things that you're doing now.
So I went from SoftChoice a year and a half there. And then my sister, who worked at Dell at the time, still there, she passed along an opening at Dell that was available for a global channel account manager position. And it said like 7 to 10 years experience, like all the things that are meant to scare away people that don't have, the drive to maybe put themselves in uncomfortable like conversations, like, why do you think you should get this job? And so I'm like, cool. Like I said, just keep practicing the interviews, because you never know. And so I just interviewed for it, kind of had nothing to lose, and they ended up offering me that position. So I'm like, I had a year and a half of experience in tech sales, but obviously I said something or came off in a way that they saw that I could bring value and execute on that position. So I got that job, which was a surprise, but I was really pumped about it, because it was going from kind of a more national company like SoftChoice. They have Canada, so they're international, but then going to Dell, which is a global company. And international business was my concentration in my MBA, so I was getting a little bit closer. And then I was there only for a year, and a former colleague of mine moved over to Amazon Web Services from SoftChoice, and got a message from a recruiter saying like, hey, this person is referring you to this position. Are you interested? And kind of another opportunity to join an even larger global organization like Amazon and Amazon Web Services. And that was almost 3 years ago now. So this is the longest I've been at a company. So they're doing something right to keep me.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really interesting that you said is like, you took a bold approach there. That's just bold, my friend. Like you were like, I know that I could probably do this role, but I may not be exactly what they're looking for on paper, but you were willing to put yourself out there to submit for that. And you were given an opportunity. I think that people, a lot of times, like, there's so much opportunity out there, but they're afraid to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just ask for it. Like, be bold, like Joseph, just ask for the
Oh,
opportunity,
gosh.
because you never know. Like, it may not be a good fit. And I'm not saying submit for a CEO job straight out of school, but like, if you believe that you can bring value to the company, ask for that opportunity.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And so, like I said, I've been here for 3 years and working my way through this organization because it's very large. Going from a territory account manager, which is my first position, so mid-market sales, Michigan and Wisconsin. Now I'm a global account representative for the automotive vertical. So I have one big customer that I cover, and
that's super cool.
Yeah, so I go from 2,000 customers to one customer. So it's a completely different dynamic. There's challenges associated with that as well. But yeah, it's cool to be able to dive deep and kind of work with some amazing companies.
So anybody that's listening that doesn't understand the sales dynamic, there's a lot of people that don't understand, there's different types of sales reps. And what's really impressing here is you kind of have gone all over the place. You've been in like just boots on the ground business development. You've been in account management. Now you're doing global account management. So share a little bit about the differences between salespeople almost, so that people that are listening out there can get a little bit of a better understanding about the sales, like just sales as a whole.
Yeah. So where to start? So account management. So sales, think of yourself as, and maybe some people think of this differently, but I think myself as kind of the quarterback where if there's a question or a need or an outcome that a customer is trying to achieve using technology, as simple as I could say that, I'm the quarterback that finds who the right person to bring in to have that conversation to help that outcome happen. So at Amazon Web Services, we have over 300 different products. So there's a lot to know. I don't know everything about everything, but there's, like you said, somebody that you could bring in that does know. So our job is to really understand what the customer's trying to do, and then find the best person to answer that question and to execute on what they need done. And as you get better at sales, you'll network a lot internally within your organization to know who that person is even faster, to bring them in even faster, to know what a customer is going to be saying maybe before they even say it, to understand where the market's going in the automotive industry, to know where some of their questions of supply chain problems that they're having are going to come up. So how do you get ahead of that? How do you bring in the right people to just put yourself in the customer's shoes?
You're the first line of defense with that client. Like, people come to you, you're the relationship holder, you're the first line of defense. So if things are going good, that's amazing. But if things are going bad, that's a tough position to be in. And I don't think that a lot of people recognize how difficult sales is.
Yeah. It's like the analogy of the coach where you praise your players for winning, but you take the blame if you lose. It's kind of like, I don't want to. It's kind of that similar flow. It takes a team to do what a customer needs to do. But if crap hits the fan, it's going to come down on you.
So let's talk about, in that role, you've got to be an excellent networker, like not just in the company, but also outside of the company. So I would imagine your role is not developing new business per se, but your role is bringing value to the company through networking and then leveraging your internal network. So what are some of your best networking tips that you have? Let's start outside of the company first. So what are some of your best networking tips for people?
Probably to ask you what your best networking tips are, because you have like 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. But I think my advice would be like, start networking like 3 years ago. I know that it's impossible to do that now. But like the amount of coffees I've bought for people, the amount of mentoring and menteeing that I've done, I count over the past decade. And that is, I think, one of the secrets to my success, and it's not too much of a secret because anyone could do it, is just the networking component. So I started my LinkedIn, I think, when I was a sophomore or freshman in college. And I've made an effort to keep that going, to keep the profile updated, to keep engagement going, to send in-mails and messages to people to ask how they're doing. but from not like a place where I'm looking for something from you, but just from an honest place. And I guess this reminds me of advice for people listening that are looking for a new job, or maybe that are starting to get into business, is I don't think LinkedIn's used enough. So a lot of people go on like a company's website, jobs, apply for a position. But if you just search on LinkedIn, for example, like Amazon Web Services, Chicago recruiter, there'll be 20 recruiters that are hiring for Chicago positions. Send in a message to each one of those 20 people to have a conversation about what positions are open, just so they could get some eyes on you. And I don't think we do that enough. That's like, these recruiters, their job is to find people like you. So why not make the first move? Because they're looking for you. But people
it's
just
exposure. Like that's one of the biggest things, is like people just knowing that you exist.
Yeah.
Because you never know what will come for that. I've gotten all sorts of crazy stuff from that, but it came from me like building out a LinkedIn profile and sending out those messages just like you're doing. Like you will stand out if you do it right. Don't do it poorly.
Yes.
Let's give them some tips. Let's give some people some tips on how to leverage LinkedIn.
Yes.
To develop relationships. So I'll share a couple if you'll share a couple. Why don't you start?
Yeah. So first thing is make sure that your LinkedIn profile is complete before you reach out to people. That's like step number one. So like complete is you have all your job experiences, you have information on what you did, you have a photo like that's as professional as you can given your budget. But then again, iPhones these days are amazing, so you have no excuse to have a crappy photo. And make sure to follow people, organizations that are in the industry that you're looking to get into, because people don't see that you're interested in that industry. Why the heck are they to reach out to you? So do a lot of things. Again, put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter. What would you want to see on your profile? Make sure it's complete, make sure it's relevant. That's tip number one for me.
Okay, so tip number one for me, aside from the profile, because that is critical. If you reach out to connect with someone, when they accept your connection request, send them a message, not selling them something, but thanking them for accepting your connection request and saying, hey, thank you for accepting my connection request. I look forward to getting to know you a bit better. If I can ever be of assistance, reach out. That's it. Like it takes no time at all.
Yep.
But like, don't reach out to them immediately and try to sell them something. That sucks.
It does suck. That does suck.
It sucks.
And piggybacking. All right,
keep going. What's your next one?
Piggybacking on that, there are some messages that you can send that aren't necessarily like direct to the person, like saying, hey, I love this post that you did. So like you said, you could even have a canned message that you send out to everyone that accepts it. Simple. When you're reaching out to somebody like a recruiter, for example, don't send a canned message that you're copying and pasting into all the recruiters, where you just do like hi dash and then the message. Like, yeah, put their name in. Yeah, exactly. Hi. She's like, what does that mean? But like, yeah, so just make sure that when you're reaching out to recruiters, for example, that's a little bit more specific to them. Like, hi, name. I see you're recruiting for this position. I'm based here. Would love to learn more about this role. Really interested in getting into this industry. Love your company. Maybe insert something about the company. It's really simple. And for some reason, there's like a barrier of people doing that. But it's like this day and age, the worst I could say is no.
So it's something that nobody can get mad at. Like, I love to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries, like stuff like that. Like, if I know it's your birthday, you are going to get a message from me on LinkedIn saying, happy birthday. I hope you have a great day. But what that does is, like, I will not reach out to somebody unless I believe I can bring value to them from a business perspective. So I'll ask for a meeting, but not unless I know in one way, shape, or form that I can deliver value. But it's easier to get a meeting if you've sent birthday messages for 4 freaking years.
And people are like, oh, happy birthday, 4 years. Oh, crap. I haven't like responded to this person. There's like absolutely. Yep.
Like, it puts you in a different, because I'm committed to the relationship, not committed to trying to just get a meeting or something like that. Like, it's truly a commitment to the relationship. So that's another tip I have.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe not a LinkedIn tip, but just part 2 of my like hidden secrets of reasons why I think attribute to my success are, and I did this all through college and even high school, is I had schooling, of course, I had volleyball, of course, but then there's like everything else, extracurriculars. So, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like my experiences that I have with people are more meaningful if I have something else that I'm doing in my life to talk about. And right now that is my nonprofit, for example, which we could get into. But in college, it was like I was on the volleyball team, I was getting my master's, but also I was on the Quidditch team. So I was Cape Kid running around the field with a broom between my legs playing Quidditch. I was on the cooking club. I was in the entrepreneurship club. So I was doing a lot of other things that would like allow my brain to decompress from volleyball from school, but I was able to build tons of relationships, meet some amazing people, learn a ton about the diversity that is Loyola. And that carried into my professional career as well. When I explained in professional for Finland and France, doing marketing, doing sales, consulting for a French coffee cup company. That was the coffee shop that I went to all the time. Like I put a SWOT analysis together for this company and had my friend translate it into French. And then boom, I posted that on my LinkedIn when I was looking for jobs when I got back finally. So it's just little things like that to stay busy outside of what you're normally doing, make you a little bit more of an interesting person to get to know, allow you to talk about things other than like work when there's time to talk about things other than work. Obviously work's important when you're on the phone with a customer, but talking about nonprofit stuff or talking about if you're really into Pokemon cards, which I went through a phase of recently, just like random things like that.
So that's another cool tip. So people like, I think sales is, that industry is becoming, even though there's a lot of technology enabled, I think that people are trying to get away from some of that. Like automation is important, right? But human connection is important. And if you do it right, it's an amazingly beautiful thing. But I think that it, like the sales industry, like it went from leveraging automation to it becoming so robotic that it's just crazy. And now it's kind of trending back towards that human connection, which I'm really excited to see. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been very, very hard for me to like be at home all of the time, because the reason I got into sales was to have that team camaraderie. And when I started at Self Choice, it was amazing because we had a whole team of everyone going through the same suffering that everyone's going through of eventually loving sales. Yeah, but it was an awesome experience because we're all doing it together. And now there's pros and cons of being remote full time. For Amazon right now, we are not required to go into the offices at all. We can if we want, but no one really goes into the office. So even if I went in the office to try to get that team camaraderie, I'm not going to get it because I'll be the only one there. So that's one of the things that's really, really tough. And so finding, like I mentioned, these extracurriculars as well to fill that just social need that we all have is extremely important. Yeah.
Do you feel like networking events and stuff are coming back around? Like I feel like from a business networking, even salespeople networking, like that's starting to come back around, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too. And I did a couple over my career, but I think they're really cool. Like there's groups that just meet over breakfast, like before their work hours, to talk about like what they're working on or what opportunities are out there. And it's just everyone trying to help everyone. And that's also a community that you get into that's relevant to your profession for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, so you have a new edition. I got to meet the new edition, which I'm so super excited about. So share a little bit with the audience just about some of your most recent experience. It's super cool.
So we had our first kiddo. Her name is Evelyn Keith Smalzer. And I have to say this, but her middle name is Keith, and Keith is the name of the volleyball coach that introduced my wife and I when we were in. So like at our wedding, he was at our wedding, and like we had this like video camera recording device where people would just record things, and he looked in there. He was like, "You better name your first child's middle name after me." I think he said it as a joke because like everyone was cocktailing, but we actually made it happen.
And you did it? That's amazing.
We did, yeah. So Evelyn Keith Smalzer, she's almost 3.5 months old now. It's our first kiddo. COVID baby, hashtag COVID baby for folks that also had kids during this time. But it's been an amazing experience so far. She slept for the first 6 months, which everyone says we're the luckiest ever for that. I think she was sleeping 10 hours, like 8 weeks in or 7 weeks in, and 9 hours of like a few weeks in. So she was kicking butt. She got her first cold a few weeks ago, so she wasn't sleeping well after that. And we're still trying to get her back to that full 10-hour stretch. But it's been an amazing experience being a new dad.
Well, and today's a big day for you.
Oh, yes. Because, wait, what did I tell you? What's today? You're talking about Corey going back to work?
Yes. Today is a big day.
Yes. So
today's the first day that your wife's back at work, right?
Correct. So
yes. Like, how has that process been? Like, kind of juggling. And I know you took some time off, so now you're just getting back into the flow as well. But like, how is it adjusting as a new parent and working?
Yes. We're luckily, Corey, my wife, and I are planners. And so we got ahead of it as much as we can. So knowing she has she works for a really amazing company that has kind of a work back program. So she took the full maternity leave and then a couple extra weeks. And then her first week back, she only has to work 50%, second week, 75%, third week, 100%. And so like we got ahead of it. We got sitters for when she was going to be working half of the day for the other half. Luckily, we have family close by. But we're building a house south of the city, about an hour in Frankfort, Illinois. And so we have cousins there and we have future nannies and future childcare there. So we're occasionally driving there now that she's starting back work and kind of working from the south suburbs while they watch the kiddo. But it's luckily we're planners and we're pretty organized. I can't imagine if we weren't.
It's a lot. And I love to see the trend of organizations really supporting moms and dads as part of this process. It's a tough thing to go through and have, all parties working full time and all that. I mean, it's a lot, but I feel like organizations are starting to recognize like how important it is to help their employees during that time.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think it becomes standard. I think if a company doesn't have like the same maternity leave and paternity leave length benefits, that it's going to be deal breakers for people much more than it was in the past, which rightfully so.
So let's talk a little bit about your nonprofit, because you mentioned it and I don't know a whole lot about it. So I want to dive into this nonprofit. So tell me a little bit about it.
Yes. So, and this is my passion project. I do this on the side. About a year and a half ago now, my wife Corey and I and a friend of ours from college who's in my fraternity, Vince, were the co-founders and initial board members of this nonprofit called Greater Than 0%. And we're a 501c3, and our mission is to find people and organizations changing the world and sharing their stories. So we have a video cast and a podcast as well as kind of the main means of this story sharing. And what we do is we interview other nonprofits and occasionally some people, individuals, and we share what they're doing. And the journey that we want our listeners to go on is one of awareness, education, and engagement. We want people to be aware of some topics that we're talking about in some of these interviews that these nonprofits are trying to end, like the high school to prison pipeline, like recidivism, people have been formerly incarcerated, getting the resources to get back on their feet, like women in Chicago have been trafficked. There's tens of thousands of women per year that are trafficked in Chicago, which I had no idea about. That's a very, very sad statistic. To topics like youth development in sports and veterans and just about anything. We've interviewed over 55 unique nonprofits at this point. We have 62 episodes as of today released. And the reason a lot of people ask me, like, why greater than 0%? Our goal is to help everyone find a cause that they could be passionate about and dive deep into. And so we want to create a platform like a Netflix style interface with media heavy content where people could scroll through tons of different interviews and videos of these nonprofits, listen to a couple, learn a little bit about a couple, and then find one that really strikes one of those chords that inspires them to get engaged with that nonprofit. So, yeah.
So if somebody knows of a nonprofit, I'm asking this for myself too.
Yeah.
So if somebody knows of just this incredible nonprofit that's doing amazing work, like what's the best way aside from reaching out directly to you?
No, but seriously, reach directly out to me.
Okay.
But take a look at our website first. I always ask this to nonprofits before they commit to doing an interview. I explain to them the mission. I explained to them the goal of us trying to have every single person find a nonprofit that they could donate their time, talent, treasure to, is explain what our mission is, explain what our values, our tenets. And then if this is valuable to your organization, which a lot of times it's yes, most times, then we just get into the interview. But reach out to me. It's joseph@gtzp.org. gtzp.org is our website. We have a board now. I think we're up to 6 or 7. And we have an intern and we have a marketing and PR person now. So it's making me very busy, which I want to be.
Well, it's amazing. And that's another thing is like, you know, you have a corporate job, like you are working full time, you now have a kiddo, but you also are leading with passion. Some of the things that you're super passionate about, you have that as a side opportunity. Like what would you say to other people that have like ideas or things in them that they're like, I would love to start a company or a nonprofit, but I'm working? Like, what would you tell these people?
Yeah, and I could take 2 routes of answering that. The nice route is just go do it, have fun, give it a shot. The other more like coach, like mean route would be to say, look at the statistics of how many hours people spend watching Netflix or YouTube or perusing and social media, and ask yourself, what could you accomplish repurposing like 10% of that time, or like 50% or 100% of that time? And then people can't use sometimes the excuse of like, I'm too busy. It's because you're realizing all these things that you're doing. It's just a swap. Yeah.
Well, when you allocate time to things that you identify as important, right? Like, if you're sitting in YouTube and Netflix and all that stuff, like it could be if you're learning educational, I get it. If you're just like, you know, diving in there, like sometimes it's just not beneficial. And like you could be doing so many other things with that time, including starting
a company. Exactly. And I do not watch Netflix. So we watch the occasional Gilmore Girls and rewatching Suits right now. Really excited for some new TV shows that come out. So I definitely watch Netflix occasionally, but nowhere near as much as I did. I sold my Xbox at the beginning of COVID. And so just limiting the amount of things that I know distract me and don't line up with what kind of my life mission is. And then everything kind of just falls into place. Yeah.
Well, and you said, because I saw a comment in one of the feeds that like you're used to doing the interviewing versus being interviewed. So it's a different adventure. But I'm curious on like what your thoughts are around. There's a lot of people that want to start podcasts or want to start, you know, all sorts of other projects. Like, how did you get started in podcasting?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot actually. If you have a smartphone, that's all you need to start a podcast. Literally, this is all you need. There's free software. It has a microphone. It has a camera. This is literally all you need. So you just got to do a little bit of YouTubing of like how to start a podcast with my phone. I'm sure there's a video for that. I'm almost positive. If not, let me know and I'll create one. But it's
and your excuses are greater than like some of these things. Like you can pull a lot of this stuff off very, very easily, but you make excuses to tell yourself that it's more difficult to do it. Sorry, like I'm just being raw there. Like I told myself that I needed to start a show or a podcast a long time ago, but I let my excuses take over.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are, I totally agree. And same with me. And I've gotten to sometimes the extremes of knowing what my excuses are going to be and getting ahead of them. For example, there's a period where like I'm a morning person, usually get up at like 4:30 every morning to work out, to start the day, meditate, all that stuff. But there are points where I wasn't consistently getting up. And so I would like put my gym clothes next to my bed, get my pre-workout ready, set it on top of my gym clothes, set my alarm. And so like, there's no excuses I could think of in my mind to get going because it's all there. It's yelling at me, maybe waking up to an alarm with an inspirational quote as well, little things. So just getting ahead of what excuses, you're going to give yourself.
That's key. Yeah. That is key. Like you've got to know yourself well enough to know what your excuses are going to be and then prepare for that. Like mine's like working out. Like I've got to do it regularly. If I stop, then I'll get it. The excuses will get worse and worse. Yeah. And then I'll convince myself out of it.
Yeah. And I definitely don't want this to come off too as like one of those self-help, like inspirational speaks or talks. But people are going through a lot of things right now, like with COVID, with what happens when you can't have social interaction for a year and a half, almost 2 years. So there's a lot of crap that people are going through right now, and it's not good. Definitely give yourself more grace than you normally would, just knowing that. But know everyone else is going through it. Know that there's a lot of people that could help you if you need it, and a lot of resources out there to do whatever you're trying to do. But yeah, so it's kind of like a mix. You have to have a balance. And I used to be the kind that's just like, get your ass up, like go do the work. And now it's like,
well, that's the athlete too. Like that's the athlete
totally.
mindset. I don't know that that's 100% healthy, right? Like you've got to know what your boundaries and your limits are. And I guess I'm not a super fan of pushing through some of that stuff just after COVID. It's like, just know where you stand with some of that stuff and take care of yourself. Like nobody else can really judge that. Like you've got to be able to judge some of that stuff for yourself. Right. But like, you know, like as far as the podcast thing, like a lot of people want to start podcasts, but it's like an excuse. Like I set excuses because I didn't want to be on camera or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? You just got to freaking do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you tell people? And this is like your words of wisdom. So I want to we've had a lot of tips and tricks. I think that this has been like a really cool conversation around like all sorts of different things. But if you were going to give somebody just like your best advice, if you're talking to a former athlete that is trying to make that transition, what is that advice?
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like we touch on a lot of things right now. And it would probably be just continuing with the grace aspect of it is us athletes are by nature very self-critical, very, very self-critical, which is but also one of our liabilities, because it could lead to spiraling out of control, getting really down on yourself, being really hard on yourself. And so even though COVID has seemed like a pause itself, my advice would be just like pause, like put the Nike slogan a little bit ahead of yourself right now. But before you just do it, just like pause for a little bit and think and reflect about what you think will make you feel good getting into spending time on, kind of looking for work wise or even nonprofit wise. But take time to reflect and reflect without a phone. Before COVID, I did a quarterly disconnect retreat where I'd get a hotel in Chicago for 48 hours and don't bring any technology. I just bring a notebook. And that was really, really helpful for me. And I want to get back to it, but with kid and COVID is finally finishing up. But yes, so it's going to happen at some point. But that was really, really a great time for me to reflect and to evaluate if I'm on a trajectory that I could, that I'm mentally okay with, that checks the boxes of what I need as a person, that helps people the way that I want to help people, that provides for your friends or your family or whoever you're caregiving for, the way that you want to. But just pause. Pause would be my slogan.
I love that. Yeah. So, okay. So how do people follow your journey? We're wrapping up on time and I want to be super respectful of your time. This has been an awesome conversation. And I've been getting to know you through this. We don't know we don't know each other super well. So this has been super exciting for me to hear about your journey as well and some of the things that you're working towards. So what are you what's the best way for people to follow your journey?
Yeah. I mean, I have an Instagram. I think it's Joseph Smalzer is the name of it. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Facebook. I have a TikTok, but I think I've posted one thing, so definitely don't look at my TikTok. But yeah, just reach out. My nonprofit email is joseph@gtzpa.org. And if you have any questions about networking, about finding a job, about interviewing, about resume building, about finding a cause or a nonprofit to donate your time, talent, treasure to, I'd love to put you in touch with some of the amazing nonprofits in your area because we're an international organization now. We've interviewed folks a lot in Chicago, but also folks abroad and across the nation. So we could help find an organization that you could dive into, but reach out. However, search my name. It's not that popular of a name, so I'll probably come up.
Well, I'll put your link. I've tagged you on some of the messages, so I'll put some of this information in the comments below. For everybody that continues to listen to this show and continues to support, thank you so much. This is such a highlight of my week. I love having conversations with these amazing athletes. Once again, I do these every Tuesday, usually from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. And the best way to continue following is just to click follow by my name and just stay in touch. I am also easily accessible, so feel free to reach out via LinkedIn if I can be of assistance in any way. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda. Love your work.